Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to wherever you are tuning in for, because again, this is a global audience. Welcome back to NAB Show Live with Nicki Sun. And obviously, if you are tuning in, you heard the news. I just wanted to address it before we get into our next guest. So unfortunately, as you all heard, NAB show, the in-person event in October in Las Vegas has been canceled. And due to the pandemic and surge of the Delta variant, it was definitely getting a lot harder for our global community to join this show. However, we are very hopeful for the April 2022 show. I'm hopeful. For those of you who don't know, NAB show has meant so much to me, and I just found out about the cancellation this morning along with every one of you. So the news is still fresh. However, we are still hopeful to move forward in April, and I look forward to connecting with you all in person when we can safely all do so. If you have any questions in regards to your tickets or future shows, there will be an email coming out to you, so don't worry. I know this news is still fresh, so just bear with us and be patient as we get that in there. But we will still be able to do the live show, so I hope you still join me because it is a 10-episode series with me, and I am on episode 8, and I still have 2 more to go, so I will still be here every Wednesday for the next 2 Wednesdays. So I am very looking forward to a person who is no stranger to NAB show, actually. She is an incredible video creator, editor. She has empowered the entire community, especially in the Filmora Pro editing suite, to really be empowered in creating. And I'm so excited because she is tuning in live from Europe. So I'm going to bring in my special guest, Kelsey Brannan, aka also known as Premiere Gal. Today we're talking about training every creator needs to stay competitive, and I think it's very important in this time, especially during the pandemic, to make sure that we are fresh and up to date with all our toolkits. And so let me grab in Kelsey. Right, let's see if I get her. This is our first live from Europe. Hi, Kelsey.
Hey, it's so funny that you were saying live from Europe. Just, live from my, little studio here, wherever you are in the world.
Exactly. It's like, we did a time change. Like, what's the time change? Like, well, because we have a very special guest tuning in from not the stateside. And look at your background. This is so cool.
Yeah,
This is the
actually, I can
Premiere Gal
pan up
set.
here. We got a little, actually, let me tilt up here on the tripod here. Oh, there it is. Little
There
neon sign there.
you
There
go.
we go. Got cropped out on the little split screen there. Thanks for having me, Nikki. And
Oh,
I'm
thanks
bummed.
for tuning in. I know it's like late for you. What time is it over there for you?
Yes, like actually, I'm a grandma these days because I have 2 young dogs right now. I just adopted another dog that's 5 months old, and they wake me up pretty early. So I'm like, it's getting ready for bedtime pretty soon. It's 9 p.m. right now, because I'm on Central European time. Yeah.
Gotcha. All right.
Yeah.
So hopefully that doesn't offset the time they might re-wake you up in a couple of hours. Like, what's going on?
It's all good. The creative life, I get a lot of my ideas for editing at night anyway, so sometimes I actually prefer to edit at night. So it's all good.
Well, amazing. Thank you so much for like, sharing some of your bedtime or sacrificing some of your early bedtime with us. You are phenomenal. I met Kelsey at NAB show actually, and through Gals and Gear as well. And again, it was always interesting for me to and exciting for me to connect with other creators, especially other women. Seeing like such trade shows can attract so many different kinds of people, but it was always interesting for me to connect with more women who are doing their thing. And so before I get into the nitty gritty of what we're talking about today, I love for the viewers to get to know you in a way that we probably would know best. So if you commission me to edit your highlight reel, what 3 moments in the tech world would have to be on it?
3 moments in the tech world. What do you mean by that? Can you elaborate? Sorry, I may have missed what you said.
Oh yeah, so just we're talking about editing a highlight reel of like your career.
Oh,
So what would need to be
If
on
I
it? It could be
could.
more than three too.
Oh, if I'm editing the highlight reel of my life.
Yes.
Ah, okay. I was confused at first. Sorry for that. Oh gosh, if I could edit a highlight reel. Okay, so one would be I think when I was in high school, I got to put on this epic slideshow. It was like a yearbook, but a digital version of it, and that's what kind of made me like fall in love with editing. I got to edit together like these little skits with like faculty, staff, and students and like highlight all the sports, and that would be like a great highlight. And then I guess my second highlight would be, getting my degree in film and media studies and then my graduate degree as well. And then I guess just realizing the moment when I could take Premiere Gal and make it my full time a couple years ago and like quitting my full time job, I think that would be the third one so far. That's like kind of the career one. It's not like all the personal stuff in my life, but those are like the top three things in like my professional career I would highlight.
That's amazing. And speaking of highlights too, if you go onto Kelsey's page, she does have a highlight section called, was it My Story or?
Yeah, I recently did something like that because I realized I haven't been sharing like enough about like the personal side of my journey, and you guys can check it out. There's like a few photos from, I guess, the past 10 years or so, something like that.
Yeah, but starting from doing so many behind the scenes documentaries, shooting for other content, to leaving all of that and starting and launching your own LLC. Congratulations.
LLC. So
That's so
official.
incredible, Kelsey.
I mean, it can seem intimidating at first, because like you don't have a lot of role models out there, at least female role models that are like, oh, they're business owners, at least when I was growing up, that had a media company. So I was like, how the heck do you do that? Like I was so intimidated, but it's actually not that difficult, and there's so many resources out there now, like, like LegalZoom online can help you out, and just like so many like digital accounting services too that can help you with the business side of things that like take that pressure off, and then you can focus a little bit more on the creativity.
Amazing. Well, today's topic is training every creator, like you and I, and those who are watching, needs to stay competitive. You're no stranger to the topic. I actually consider you a huge expert, especially in video editing. I mean, look at that logo behind her. It's definitely a reflection, which is the coolest logo, by the way, of how to really edit using Premiere Pro, utilizing the logo and putting your own style Premiere Gal in there. That's like so amazing. And so also to those who are tuning in, if you do have a specific question for Kelsey, there is a question submission form below. So make sure you ask them. We'll try to get to them as best we can at the end of it. But yes, I would say to get a little idea of what you've been teaching, what was the last presentation you gave? And can you share some highlights of that with the audience?
Yes, so I mean, I every week is kind of like me researching, figuring out stuff that I find interesting that I think that others would find useful. And this past one was I was actually inspired by the Kid Laroi and Justin Bieber's lyric video for their new song Stay.
Okay.
And it's not the official music video, but it's the official lyric video. And I love lyric videos because I find the way that you can play with the text and the lyrics
Mhm.
with the video is super interesting to me. And so, rotoscoping, like cutting out people and putting text behind them and tracking text to like moving objects is kind of intimidating. So I was like, why don't we plan some videos around this topic? So the last week's one was actually rotoscoping these exploding objects. So there was like a champagne bottle in ultra slow motion, and I actually found the exact footage that they used in the Justin Bieber video. It
Oh my
turns out
God.
that they just used stock video from Envato Element, which is one of the stock sites that I use. And I was like, oh my God, like the editor just took stock video and put text, and it just made it like me realize how easy it is to like edit even for like the top pop artists today. So I just wanted to break it down and share some tips around that topic. And as I said before, I like to find topics that are like appealing to me and then try to explain it. So that's like a pretty good example. And that was the most recent one I did.
Amazing. And I know that video has hit the TikTok community very hard because of to touch an emu has been, started that whole drone video of him going around with that video. And then they
Oh
brought the
yeah.
Bella Porch, and then everybody's doing another rendition of it. So it was very, very cool to see that. So to hear from an editor's standpoint, like, the lyrics, and actually anybody could kind of do that if you learn, and anybody can kind of learn how to do that if you follow Kelsey's channel, because you do a great job of breaking it down tutorial wise. There is like new content on your channel of how to do something, like hands-on how to do something tutorials on your channel. Can you explain the process of kind of the thought process of how you do pick the topics? Like, do you go to certain sites, web forums, or like what really influences and inspires you every day to come up with the topics that you do?
Well, I kind of touched on it before. It's kind of like, it's a fine line between what I think people actually want to see and like what would be useful and what would do well on YouTube, right? Because you have to think about the YouTube algorithm as a YouTuber, and also what I find interesting myself. And I try to stick with what I find interesting because normally that passion shines through in the video versus just like doing something that I think would get a lot of views. And that's not the end goal per se. Of course, you want a lot of views on the YouTube content, and you want more people to come and discover your channel because it's part of my business. But I guess for me, it's just finding a piece of art that exists in the world and being like, oh, can I replicate that? Can I do that? Or creating something original and then explaining how I did that process, right? And then
Mhm.
trying to figure out the parts that are the steps, kind of like a scientific method, like in science class, you'd have to be like, I remember one time my science teacher, she did this thing, and I will always remember it. She made us write a scientific procedure on how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And then we would bring the procedure up to her and she'd like try to follow it and then it was like, now put the knife on the bread, and she just put the knife on the bread without putting the peanut butter in first. And so it was just a funny experience, and I was like, wow, you really have to think about how you're going to explain something. And so like at the end of the day, that's kind of my specialty. I'm super
Mhm.
meticulous in my videos because I don't know if it's like an OCD thing or something, but I really like to explain things well because I hate it when things don't make sense, if that makes sense. So I'm always
Yeah.
like, okay, how can I do this the right way? So actually the script is like the longest part of the process for me. And then like actually filming and editing is like a breeze. I'm like, okay, the hard part is done. I know what I'm gonna do now. So yeah.
It's incredible to see you push out content, I would say weekly. And when it comes to the editing part, because I would call it you the master editor part, what is the number one thing that people need to know when they get started in editing?
Well, I think you always need to estimate for more time. Like it's a lot of people say, "Oh, how do you get so like fast at editing?" I'm like, "Well, I'm actually like not that fast. It still takes me like a long time because it's like a whole process. But like, I mean, to get started in editing, you really just need to practice and do projects. Like the way I started was just, you know, asking people if they need help and doing some internships and like just getting my hands dirty, playing around with stock footage too can even get it done. But if you're just like, oh, I want to become professional now, it's going to take some time. You need to practice and you need to intern, you need to get apprenticeships. And then eventually the engines will start clicking and everything starts to make sense. You start problem solving. It's like this process where you're just like you're starting editing and you're just doing very basic cuts, right? Like maybe to the beat of the music, adding some text, and next level is thinking, okay, how do you get that text to interact with the scene a little bit more? And then on the next level is like you may be running into some technical issues, and then this is called the advanced stage where you're able to troubleshoot and find workarounds in the systems. And I'm still doing that all the time to this day where something's not working out and I have to Google it. And that's actually a huge benefit of the channel growth actually is a lot of people Google things and my page comes up. So I hope to help people in those times when they have issues when they're trying to edit and something's not working out as well.
Absolutely. And I think probably one of the number one questions you might get is like, well, since your channel is so heavily focused on Premiere Pro, like how can I learn how to edit for other things? So what would you say to
Mhm.
those who are learning to edit and finding your page super informational, but might not have the same editing tools as you to begin with?
Sure, yeah. Well, the NLEs, non-linear editing systems, Premiere Pro is one of them. And I do a lot of tutorials also in After Effects and Photoshop as well on the channel. Premiere is kind of like an adjective. I have dabbled in some other programs like Filmora Pro. It's a kind of it's not entry level and it's not necessarily worse than Premiere Pro. It's getting there. And what's useful about Filmora is that unlike Adobe, you can buy it once. It's not subscription. I know some people are really don't like the subscription aspect of it. So there's that. Final Cut Pro 10 is Mac. I also am a Mac user. I love the Mac. So it was difficult for me to let go of Final Cut when Final Cut Pro 7 kind of died and before
Mhm.
10 emerged. I had to figure out what that next system was. And the Adobe Creative Cloud system worked for me because Premiere works really well with After Effects and Audition and some other tools that I use, and it works, you know. But I think if you stumble upon my page, a lot of like the editing tips that I share are still applicable. They just might be located just in a different area. And if you're in TV, of course, there's Avid. But if you're like a creator, I would recommend, obviously Adobe Creative Cloud because that's what I use. But also, if you're a Mac user, there's nothing wrong with using Final Cut Pro 10. It's still a super great program.
Yeah, and you should still follow Kelsey because she gives such amazing
Yeah,
tutorials.
After Effects. If you guys want to learn After Effects, the last video I did was pretty much all in After Effects. So,
Amazing. And when you're teaching people how to do things, like let's say like a feature that hasn't even come out yet, what is the process? Does Adobe contact you
mhm.
right away and like this is what you we want to
Yeah,
share with the
they're like,
audience and then
they're like, yo, they're like, yo, gal, we have a secret coming out. And I'm like, okay, yeah, let me know what it is. I got it planned. It's not, it's kind of like that, but it's like a lot of other people too. Like all the major publishers, they have a kind of a pre-release program. Well, a media, what do they call it? I forget what it's called, but it's like a pre-launch kind of a media call, and they
Mhm.
share like everything that's coming out just a couple weeks before the new release is coming. And so then I can just they do like a whole presentation for Premiere Pro, After Effects, and a character animator, and I think Audition if there's any updates to that tool. And then I kind of decide, okay, which ones would actually be worth the video because some of it is like, oh, they updated the GPU speed and now it increases it by 5 times. And I'm like, I don't know if people want a whole video about the GPU update. Generally, I like to do the updates when they have updates to like motion graphics or if they completely change a user interface and I can explain kind of what has changed and maybe some pros and cons about it as well because it's not always dandy and Premiere Gal. I try to be positive about a lot of the changes and I like to give critical feedback as well. So that's kind of my process for that. After the presentation, I decide what's worthwhile to share.
Amazing. And I guess like we're talking about SEO and YouTube, which is kind of like a part of the whole YouTube experience, and you're a YouTube creator as well. So diving into maybe some of the top popular videos that people would stumble across your page, can we go into maybe like your top three of videos that you've done on your page to give also the audience like a variety of what you talk about?
Sure. Let's
And yeah, connect us to the SEO part.
The SEO, yeah, good segue. Yes, so one of like the most popular videos on my channel is actually on my live stream equipment recommendation. So if you guys are into live streaming, I have one for phones and I also have one for connecting your DSLR to your computer so you can have a high quality HD stream and like the microphone setup, what software to use. That's a really good one. Another one that's done really well is actually surprisingly a Photoshop tutorial I did. It's actually over 1 million views and it's how to restore and colorize old photos, which
Oh,
is pretty
wow.
cool. And I actually
That
did a
is
photo of
cool.
my grandpa on his wedding day from like gosh, I don't know when they got married. Probably in like the 40s. I can't remember, but it's this
Mhm.
old photo and it had like damaged corners and this nice smile. And I just, used that as the demo. And I don't know, maybe it was my grandpa looking down on me from above and was like, I'm gonna bless you with 1 million views on this video. It's like, okay, cool. And then the other ones are just like Premiere Pro tips, like how to slow down and speed up like time remapping. So if you're like curious about like, let's say you have just 30 frame per second video and you're like, oh, I didn't shoot it in a higher frame rate. Well, I can show you how to use optical flow and time remapping to make it ultra slow motion, then back down to fast speed. So like, how do you play with time? That's like another popular one on the channel.
Wow. Well, those all sound like amazing topics. So you guys definitely need to follow. But I definitely like that connection. I feel like the million views what it's like I think there is the magic, right, of technology, of how do we use today's technology to improve on technology we didn't have back then to enhance, wedding photos or just anything black and white, or just even now when we're converting like things on floppy disks. I'm probably aging myself, and like cassettes into like digital formats. And that all has to kind of do with learning the new technology at NHB show. Oh, I think I have it a little frozen on that end. Well, I'm gonna see if I can grab her again. Let's see. I'm gonna wait for it to buffer. I think I'm losing Kelsey a little bit. Technical difficulties, but this is the first time having a live stream with a guest all the way from Europe. So let me see how to do this. I might have to cancel out and re-invite. Let's see. Um, let's, Thank you for bearing with us. I'm trying to figure out how to try this again. Uh, yeah. The great thing about technology is we actually get to talk to people live, but oh, it's just buffering. Let's see what happens here. And on my end, I'm like, how do I gotta love live? Yes. I'm just reading everyone's comments so far. I'm like, how do I cancel her out so I can reconnect her in? There's no exit button on this. Mm, let's see. Like this is how we're gonna solve issues in lifetime. This is actually quite fascinating. All right, let me see here. Gal. Oh, I hear something. Who knew? Yes, this happens to all of us. So like, do I keep it live or do I exit out? I don't want to exit this out. So like, we're gonna we're gonna sit through this. Patience is a virtue here, and it's just so great to see everybody tuning in from all around and leaving such kind comments for Kelsey because she does such amazing tutorials and lives. Probably need to look at her. Video on YouTube on how to stream a live broadcast because it definitely could be on my end as well. Let's do. Okay. All right, good. So she left, and now I'm gonna ask her to come back in. It's so interesting because I have never experienced that before. Um, Kelsey and I met, thank you, Prince Connor. How did I and Kelsey meet at NAB show? Well, 2 years ago, oh, now it's 3 years. In 2018, I was emceeing the post-production stage at NAB show, and I was introducing all these amazing speakers and guest speakers, and all of a sudden, I think Kelsey was a part of the Gals and Gear panel that I was introducing, and it was just this incredible moment of realization that wow, there are like people like me who are very into technology and I just resonated with her so much, and we continued to follow up and network and see each other at NAB show every single year from that point on through Gals and Gear. And she's been an amazing resource and mentor. Oh, here we go. Okay, let me bring Kelsey back in. Yeah, she's back. Okay, let's see how this goes. Okay, let's see if we can get her.
Am I back?
You're
Am I
back!
I was
Yay!
like doing a magical spell. I was like, please work. So I was totally bad before this, and I realized that I wasn't connected to the Wi-Fi in the office. So I was on the data, and I think my data just was like, over. Sorry about that.
But I love how we were able to actually show like the technical aspect of it and actually find a workaround for it. So this is just what I love about, technology in a way that we get to figure things out sometimes. Sometimes it's like new to all of us and we got to go with the flow and roll with the punches and now you're back.
Gotta roll with the flow. Exactly.
I
Exactly.
was actually
Okay.
going to ask you about like what is your life setup because you look so crispy, girl. Like I'm just like, what is your setup when it comes to
Well,
mobile?
I just have an iPhone 10. I haven't updated to the, latest and greatest iPhone. Trying not to fall for the Apple, gotta get the latest thing
I trust. I'm not
every
even on
time.
Apple. I'm on a Samsung.
Hey, hey. So, it's actually funny because when I was in college, I worked at the Apple store and I walked in on my first day with like a flip phone. This was in 2008,
Okay.
and
Respect.
everybody was like, "What is that? Why do you have that?" And I basically got like peer pressured into getting my first iPhone after I worked there. And ever since I've had it. So it worked. It worked. But I have a softbox light right here. I don't know. Actually, it's quite big. It's the one I actually use for filming my YouTube videos as well. And I have another softbox light lighting up the background. And then
Okay.
of course I have my big screen back there, and the neon sign is a nice separation, right? You got to think about separation when you're filming a
Mhm.
little bit if you want to have some depth. But honestly, just one light and one light back there, and that's it.
And just the phone. Yeah.
And just the phone, just the phone.
Gotcha. But it looks so crispy. Shout outs to the iPhone 10 then, and for getting back on and finding solutions to get back on. So that's good. So yeah, for those, we've all learned together a quick tutorial. See, this is like a built-in tutorial. We know how to get back on live now. So connect to the
Yes,
Wi-Fi and make sure we have that
exactly.
connection down.
Oh, I also forgot to mention too. So like I have a tripod here. It's just like a little Manfrotto B-free tripod, and then on top of it I have the Joby iPhone version that
Yes,
has, like the iPhone holder, and it's like
I love
wrapped
Joby.
around. It's wrapped around the tripod
The
plate,
Gorilla
so
Pod.
it's like yeah, the Gorilla Pod is like wrapped around the tripod plate, so it's like steady, and then my phone is just vertically mounted on top of the Joby phone mount. So that's what's going on right now.
Gotcha. And is this the same setup? So you have the phone here, but when you do and film your tutorials, are you just switching it out with your DSLR?
Well, I can bring it over here one sec.
Okay, sure. Yay, show
Um,
and tell. We actually had a question
so
about that. They're like, can Kelsey show us some things in her studio? I'm like, we'll see how planted this is.
yeah, so this is I shoot with the Canon EOS R, and
Okay.
I have attached to it a viewer here. It's called the
Nice.
Andy Cine 4K. So that way I can see myself when I'm filming better because I have a flip out here,
Mm-hmm.
but the cables get in the way that are here.
Gotcha.
With so it doesn't look that great, and it's just easier to see. And I shoot with the 35 millimeter wide angle. And this is great because it's a full frame camera, so it's like super crispy. You get a nice depth of field too because the aperture can go down to like 1.8. And when you have a lower aperture, your background starts to get a little bit more blurry. So, like portrait mode on your iPhone,
Mhm.
this is the advanced portrait mode for video. um, and yeah, it shoots great photos too, this camera. So the EOS R, it's pretty portable. It's a new mirrorless camera that came out like 2 years ago, and ever since then there's been like EOS R2 there and all other stuff. But again, I'm sticking with the original because it works great for me. Um,
Amazing. Thank you for going through the
yeah,
set and see how
yeah.
beautifully she explained that. Oh my goodness. Like I felt like anybody who doesn't know anything about cameras or aperture or like depth of field would know a little basic understanding because you explained it so beautifully.
And this is the I'm back with more. I'm like the Target lady, like coming back with more. And you guys should buy this. Um, from SNL, that skit, the Target lady,
Yeah,
when
I'm
Kristen,
back.
yeah, I'm back. I'm back. So this is the Deity microphone. I actually just switched to this last year because I wanted to sync my audio directly into my camera because before I was recording with this Rode USB microphone directly into my computer. So my
Okay.
audio track was being recorded into my computer, and that was fine and all because it's really easy to sync audio and video in Premiere. You just like literally lasso and select both the clips in the timeline and right click and press synchronize. That's all you have to do. But when I started working with editors, it was kind of a pain to be like, oh, and here's a separate audio file. So I got this Deity with this really long cable. So that way I could hook it up to my camera and have the mic be closer to me. So that way it's not mounted on the camera. And I mounted it on a monopod. So it just sits below me while I film. I'm
That
not
is
using it.
incredible. It's not even a
Yeah.
boom pole or a boom mic. So there are
No,
definitely ways to, MacGyver or Kelsey
exactly.
your way into creating your camera setup. That's amazing. We actually have so many questions now that you started showing your gear, so I'm going to get to some of
Should have
them.
started doing that in the beginning. Show and
I
tell does it.
know. It's like, we're trying to talk, but this whole thing has gotten us. See, there's good things for everything. So AWSO was like starter camera for video recommendations. Maybe even the one that you just had. Would you suggest that for a starter camera?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I would say like a starter camera is like you want to like invest in a good camera that can last for a long time. I think
Hmm.
uh, one person said one photographer that I look up to is it Annie Leibovitz? I think that's her name, and she
Oh, she's
said
amazing.
just yeah, she's amazing. She has like the master class, and I think she just said like just get to know one camera like really really well and that becomes like your baby. Like you don't need the latest and the greatest thing. That's kind
Hmm.
of like the theme of this IGTV. It's like you don't need the
Yeah,
latest tech, you don't need the latest
I
iPhone, you
agree.
just need it. You need to know lighting, you need to have good audio, and you need to know your camera. So get to know that one camera. The USR, I was interested in Sony for a little bit because I did go to Sony camera camp with iJustine and all those great YouTuber vloggers, and they like kind of persuaded me that Sony's great, but the interface of Canon I've just become so used to over the years, and I just really felt like why would I make the switch when it's already a great camera for me?
Hmm.
So if you're interested, I would definitely recommend the EOS R. There's also a little bit lower level. There's the EOS, not EOS, it's the M50. So it's still the mirrorless and it's a little bit more compact. It still shoots 4K. It has an interchangeable lens. So if you want to spend good money, get a great lens. You can get the M50 and then get a lens that goes down to the aperture 1.8, and you can get that really great depth of field. So if you want to get a little bit lower end body, you can get the M50, but you'll probably have to end up getting some type of lens adapter as well because their lens series I don't think has a lot of options. So you may have to
Gotcha.
take a lens from like a Canon 5D, for example, and
Mhm.
get an adapter, an M mount adapter that goes from the M mount to the EF mount. And those cost like $100. So it's just like that little ring that you put between the body and the lens.
Yeah, but that's a great way to like create a value, not overspend if you're like looking for a budget. But yeah, definitely a more affordable camera body and like $100 adapters, but it allows you in that way to have the adapter to have access to way more amazing lens. So what a
Yeah.
great suggestion. See this, we're all learning here. Editor guy wants to know what's that box thing that's attached to the screen on top of the DSLR? So I'm assuming like the camera monitor.
Oh,
Where did you get it? He wants one.
yes. So Andy Cine, it's Andy, like spelled like the name Andy, short for Andrew. And Cine, it's Cine, like short for cinema. So it's
There
Andy
you go.
Cine, and it's 4K. One issue with this one, though, I don't know if I got a defaulty one, but for some reason, when I have it hooked up, it just like will turn off and turn back on really quickly and then turn off again. And
Mhm.
eventually I get it to stay on, but there's something like weird with it. I'm not saying that it's not a great one, but once it's on, but something weird
Okay.
is happening with it. So a really, really high end type of monitor that you can get is the
Yeah,
Atmos, but
Adam's,
they're
yeah.
yeah, they're pretty expensive though. They're like 2000 plus, if not
Yeah.
$4,000 for the
Yeah.
monitor. This one I think was like 300 or
Yeah.
400. I can't remember. So it's like a lot more reasonable for
Yeah.
like, starting out. And for me,
Totally.
I mean, I'm not really starting out, but I don't want to spend $3,000 on a
I hear
monitor, you know what
you.
I mean?
I definitely cover a lot of tech too. And so like, I'm very grateful when companies can send stuff. So Small HD is also another one. I know there's
Yeah,
LilyPud,
yeah.
there's Free Monitor, but that actually answers the other another person's question of what's the brand of the viewfinder. So Andy Cine.
And you can get it on Amazon, or B&H probably has it as well.
Yeah. And okay, life in picture. Hi, thanks for joining. Do you have a quick tip for exporting files on Premiere Pro?
Yes. So if you are exporting your video and before you export it, you render it in the timeline because you want to see how it looks before you export it. What you can do in the dialog window, so after you go to File, Export Media, you get that new window that comes up. And underneath, like all of the video settings at the very bottom, there's like 6 or 7 little check boxes, and there's one called Use Previews. And if you check that box, it actually speeds up your export significantly because it'll use the rendered media that was already rendered in your timeline, so it doesn't redo it over again when you export. So it's a huge time saver because you know how it is when you have to export. You're like, oh, I just want to get it out. Like, why do I have to wait? Especially if it's like a 10 minute with like lots of color grading and stuff. Use previews and it will help.
Ooh, okay. And this is amazing. I know this is like trading too. So like, I guess for, to wrap up on like those kinds of questions, like what couple of videos would you recommend viewers to start on your channel? Do you have a playlist of like when you're just getting started in video editing, here are the 3 videos, or here's a playlist of all the videos to help people feel comfortable starting to edit in Premiere Pro?
Yes, so I actually, talking about video exporting, I actually just made a 30-minute beginner's guide to video exporting, which goes into everything you need to know. So there's that. There's also a beginner's guide to color grading that I put out, and I'm working on, and I hope to get it out this fall, a beginner's guide to sound design. But if you're just looking for like basics to get in, I did make a 20-minute beginner's tutorial to get started in Premiere Pro, but I don't have it like organized yet. I am working on something right now that I can't talk about right now, but hopefully soon there'll be something like that, which will make it a little bit more easier to navigate.
Incredible. And we can all find this on your YouTube channel.
Yes, that's correct. Just youtube.com/Premiere Gal. You'll see a few different playlists there and an After Effects playlist as well.
So much valuable information. So beyond video editing, I know we're talking about training every creator needs to. What would you suggest beyond video editing that every creator needs in their toolkit, whether it's software, hardware, just mindset, like anything?
Well, you can have a great mindset, but if you don't have a good graphics card, you're going to be pretty frustrated.
We're keeping it
I
real
mean,
here.
it's true. It's true. Like, so I have a couple different computers that I work with, and it's like the footage now. Okay, so I'm just gonna really keep it real here. I really think 4K is overrated, and the reason why is that it really lags on a lot of hardware. And like if you have a computer that's just a couple years old and you don't have like the latest and greatest GPU, it really lags, and having to make proxies in Premiere Pro is a huge pain. So I actually shoot everything in 1080p, and it's just way better for that. So if you're working on a computer that's not like top end, top of the line recommended for editing, it's going to be frustrating to edit with 4K. So I work on, well, what I have hooked up to my computer right now is a MacBook Pro from 2017, pretty higher end one, but it only goes up to 16 gigabytes of RAM. So that's why
Mhm.
I also have a Dell Precision laptop that has 64 gigabytes of RAM, and it has the NVIDIA, what is it, RTX Quadro 4000. And that is like optimized for Premiere because NVIDIA partnered with Premiere Pro and they're like, hey, let's make encoding better. And when you
Mhm.
scrub through and you play it back, it's just so much more fluid. So for like more detailed work, like rotoscoping, intense color grading, it's better to use a laptop like the Dell Precision versus the MacBook Pro, which if you're just doing a vlog with just some minor text on top, it's great. But,
Mhm.
you know, I would say invest in a good editing laptop that's like bulked up with RAM and like a good
Mhm.
GPU. It's hard for me to use the PC though. Like honestly, it is because I'm so used to the Apple flow. It's hard for me to edit, especially when you have to update the graphics cards on the PCs and on Macs you don't. That's kind of annoying, but it makes editing easier, so I'm all for it.
Yeah, I'm glad that we're talking about that too, because beyond just the software, it's the hardware that allows it to make it work. Do you have a minimum recommendation of how many gigabytes of RAM that someone should be looking into when choosing a computer for editing?
Well, I have the MacBook Pro with 16 gigabytes of RAM, and it works just fine for my 1080p tutorial work. It'll work for you. I think that would be the minimum for me. I think the recommended minimum on like the official site is 8,
Okay.
but I would 16 minimum, but I think we're probably moving towards 32 soon, the minimum. But like I said, it's like the reason why the GPU is important is because versus just so like there's the CPU, which is the central processing unit, and then the GPU is the graphics card. And when I was talking about NVIDIA, basically when you render with the NVIDIA GTX or RTX graphics card, it takes some of the bottleneck of the processing away from the CPU. So that way it can export and encode faster and play back faster. So I would say you need to get a great graphics card. I think I made a blog post about it. I can't remember. Maybe I'll follow up. If you guys are interested, you can DM me and I can send you a recommended
Yeah.
GPU unit because there's so many that it would be hard for me to say, oh, you need to have the minimum of this variation, but it's easier
Sure.
just to send you a link.
Yeah, definitely. So everyone go follow Kelsey for sure. You've been so generous with like all your tips. And I know you also do other presentations, but I would like to kind of transition into your time at NAB. You've definitely been with NAB Show longer than I have. So can you kind of just explain how you kind of came across NAB Show, your role in it, and why it's so important for people to attend trade shows like NAB Show?
Oh, trade shows were huge for my growth and getting my name out there and exposure and connecting with other creators like you and I, for example. I I heard about NAB show. Actually, I need to do some digging in my brain to really think about how I came across this, but because all this kind of a blur because I went to so many different trade shows. The first 2 years I started on YouTube, but I think I found out about NAB show through work because I was working at the State Department in the Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs on the digital team, and I was editing short documentaries for our international exchange programs. And, of course, they wanted their employees to get like training each year. And so they gave us a list of like different trade shows. And I think NAB show was on that list. And I was like, oh, I want to go to that. So the first time I went, I think it was as the professional videographer and editor for the State Department. And then, I started my gal thing on the side because I was like, oh, I like teaching and training and then I attended it. And then when my gal presence grew, I think NAB Show reached out to me to see if I wanted to be one of their, I forget what it was called. I think it was in 2018 or 2017, one of their media influencers. So I would go and like take photos and, talk about my experience. And then I also did some like talks with post-production world at NAB Show.
think that's where I
So
found you.
yeah,
That was
so it hasn't
2018 for
been.
sure. I know that.
Yeah, actually, it was just 2017, I think, was the first time I went, Nikki. Like, you're not
Okay.
that far behind me. Like, honestly, like, I started my channel in 2016 and I didn't even know about NAB show until the next year. So, but it's a great show and like honestly, it was huge for me to build up my confidence as a trainer to get validation from other big master trainers in the industry that are saying, okay, this is how you do it. And they were key helpers, like Christine Steele, Jeff Greenberg,
Yes.
Yarly Lairpole, Louisa Winters, like all of those folks, have been crucial to me, whether they know it or not, whether I've told them directly, that they've made a huge impact and gave me the confidence I need to continue what I'm doing each day, you know?
Yeah, and it's incredible to see how many companies that you now work with and partner with, and the content that you continue to create. It's just so inspiring, Kelsey. I cannot stress that enough to see, someone who has done the work for so long and now is getting like the recognition and like, you're reaching a lot of people and you're creating a lot of valuable content. And I think especially in today's generation where people can get kind of caught up in the number of followers they have or just trying to like throw everything out there to be famous overnight. Like you've done the work for a long time and the technology that has advanced and you're empowering people at the end of the day. So when it comes to content creation, like we talk about it being one of three things, right? Educational, inspirational, or educational. I don't know if I repeated myself there, but but when it comes to like the training and the content that is creating to get to the level that you're at, what advice do you have for some starters for folks who are looking into creating and designing the content to be as successful as you are?
Yeah, I think it's okay to start out, basic, and I think it's cool to look back at older videos and see the growth that you've done and kind of evolve yourself. And sometimes I do watch some older videos and I'm like, oh, why did I have the audio? Why is the audio so bad? What was I thinking? But that's just part of the process. So don't get too caught up in the technical stuff. Like just like try to be yourself as much as possible and stick with the things that you love and share your passion, whatever it is, if it's not tutorial based, if it's just sharing your life. And how do you how do you see the world and how can you videograph it in a very interesting way? Like think about new angles and watch things, like consume things. Don't isolate yourself in a box. Like, girl, I'm watching Netflix every night, like I'm looking at stuff, I'm watching other creators and especially in the pandemic, it's been difficult because I'm lucky enough that I work with my partner Anya, and we're kind of like a two-person team, and we're together most of the time. But if you are just a solo creator, try as much as possible to reach out to other creators and connect, because like the last thing you want to be doing is isolating yourself.
Mhm. You have something to share with the world, and so
Yeah.
it's really good to see how far you've come and grown. So what is kind of like on the next project pipeline for Premiere Gal?
Well, just doing the weekly grind. I have videos lined up until next year already. So like I'm just trying to like honestly make time for personal stuff too, like getting a home and, growing a family and all that stuff is like a whole nother part of the gal life. So for me, it's just trying to maybe get more efficient at doing gal, so I'll have more time for other aspects of my life. Maybe I'll do another channel on building a home from scratch, which has been
What?
one of our dreams to do. So Anya and I are looking to potentially do something like that, or maybe have another just like chill channel that's like literally just like ambient beats with like beautiful scenery. Like I've always wanted to do something like that, in addition to, of course, doing tutorials. But Premiere Gal is not going anywhere. We are definitely just continuing to try to make our content as high quality and easily accessible as possible.
That's incredible. And by the way, those channels with ambient beats and music do very well. I would know because it's always on in the background. Like
Yes.
Circle TV is one of my favorites with like the DJs in beautiful places too. So I would definitely like be tuning into that channel, and especially if you do like an HGTV version of like how to build your home. I'm on it. Are we thinking like tiny home or are we like thinking
Oh, big home.
big
Like
home?
I was on the like
Tiny
tiny
house
home
nation.
trains between 2016 and 2018. I was like, I want to get a shipping container and convert it into a home for like the longest time. And then I was like, after living in one bedroom apartments, and I'm still in a one bedroom condo right now, it's like it's just when you have two dogs, it's just like you need a backyard. Like you need to have a little bit more real estate. And it would be great to have a home office too, because right now we're renting an uh off house office away. And like it's nice to have that separation, but it'd be nice to just have a little bit more space, if you know what I mean, than a tiny home.
Gotcha. Well, we have some time for a couple of questions, so I'm going to go through some of them. So if any of you all watching have a question, there's a question box so I can pull it up, in the special IG live format. But let me see here. We have okay, this is how it works. So, oh, Jacob, hi Jacob. I'm just gonna read it out loud because sometimes when I put it on the screen, the bottom part gets cut off. So I'll read it and
Got
then put
it.
it on the screen. But it says, have you tried out Final Cut Pro for your old MVP? I use it because the accessibility is better than Premiere.
Interesting. Have you tried out Final Cut Pro for your old
Oh, MacBook Pro.
because
Yeah.
right, because the accessibility is better than Premiere. Okay. By accessibility, Jacob, do you mean like accessibility for, like audio descriptions? Like, what do you
I
mean
think
by
accessibility.
accessibility?
So Jacob, I hope you don't mind me sharing. Jacob is actually a video editor who edits with one hand. He has the use of one hand.
Ah,
So when
okay,
it comes
got it.
to like
Okay.
accessibility, which by the way, I hope I can't confirm our next guest yet, but if so, it would be about tech accessibility. So next week's episode would be incredible
I
to
love
watch.
that.
But yeah, talking about accessibility when it comes to editing, knowing that it's created for people, for like fully abled, right? So how is
Right.
accessibility for Premiere Pro?
Wow. I mean, honestly, Jacob, this is something I need to talk with the Premiere Pro team about this to check in. I'd love to know from you, like what do you need specifically to see how we can make it better? But I haven't used Final Cut on my MacBook Pro. I haven't actually bought the app. I don't have it on my computer at all. I think because I had a really bad experience with it in 2013, I was like, never again, never again. I'm going back to Premiere. And so I haven't tried it out, and that was a work computer, so I don't have it. Sorry, Jacob. So feel free to DM me and let me know what's bothering you about Premiere, and I can see if I can relay it to the product team.
Awesome. That's incredible because we have someone who already talks to the product team. So if we can get accessibility in all programs for everybody, that's amazing. Because we always talk about inclusivity, accessibility in tech, and this is definitely one of those things that we shouldn't have it hinder anybody to do the things that they're passionate about. Another question is, any advice for colorblind people who want to color grade their own videos?
I love this question because I always talk about this in my color grading videos. Use the scopes. So there is Lumetri Color, which is Lumetri Color Panel, and then there's Lumetri Scopes. And I always say, don't rely on your eyes for color grading because you can use the scopes and it will tell you what the level should be at. So you can see the RGB and to see if it's in color balance. So if the RGB parade scope is what it's called. I think it's such a funny name, RGB
Yeah,
parade. I always imagine
a
like an
party.
LGBT pride like party, like woohoo, it's a parade. It's Pride Month, it's parade. RGB parade is the just the main three colors of red, green, and blue, and you can see if they're balanced. And if they're balanced, it means it's completely white balanced, which is a great little tip.
Mhm.
Um, so you can watch my color grading video, and hopefully you can get some tips in there to see how it might help you not rely on your eyes. But there is still some issues, of course, with accessibility. I think that can be improved upon. But there's only so much you can do, and maybe color blindness provides a really cool filter on your editing because it's like that's your perspective.
Mhm.
And I don't think, for example, there's some color grading on films that I'm not necessarily a fan of, but it's just the way that subjectively they saw it. So I don't know. Maybe I'm going too deep into this, but I just think it would be really cool to have your perspective on how you edit with with the fact that you are colorblind.
I absolutely agree. It's like we talk about authentic storytelling and seeing the world from different perspectives. I think that would be such a cool channel to have, even just to put out your videos. So there's always a way to like really hone in on your strengths and create like amazing content from it, just as you have, Kelsey. I want to thank you so much for joining us. I know like we're running out of time, but I really thank you so much for joining in when I know it's your bedtime. I hope to see you like, well, unfortunately not this year in person, but hopefully I'll get to see you in April of 2022 when NAB show resumes.
Yeah, we will see. We will see what's happening. I don't know if you've ever come to Europe either, but there's some other stuff going on here, I think next fall, hopefully. But we will see what's happening. But yeah, I really hope April will happen for us.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Well,
fingers
again,
crossed.
to everybody tuning in, thank you so much. Please follow Kelsey. Subscribe to her YouTube channel. Learn all her amazing tutorials as you have already gotten a preview, an amazing preview of what she's capable of and the knowledge that she has and the expertise she brings to everything. Continue to follow NAB Show. You can follow me too, Nicki Sun, just for updates on the show. And I really hope to see you all in person, if not this year next year for sure. But we have two more lives left with NAV Show Live with Nicki Sun. So please join us next week, Wednesday, 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And then we end this live series on September 29th with a very, very special guest as well. Again, it's all a surprise until the Monday before the show. So make sure you follow us on Instagram. Kelsey, thank you again. And I just want to say good night to you and a good afternoon and the rest of the day to everyone else who tuned in.
Thank you so much, Nikki, and thank you everyone for tuning in. It's been a great chat.
Awesome. Okay. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.